Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Sid, and I'm from the IT Security Solutions team at ManageEngine, and I will be your host and presenter for today's webinar. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that you have no glitches with the audio or with viewing my shared screen. So I hope you can see my presentation on your screen, which should say Log Management Best Practices for SIEM. So I'm just going to pause for about 30 seconds. In case you have any difficulties with either the audio or with the chat screen, do use the chat option on your webinar console to let us know and we'll try to resolve the issue. Right, so if nobody has any issues, we can get started. I just want to get a couple of other housekeeping things out of the way. Firstly, we'll be sending you the recording of the webinar. So you can easily share it with your colleagues, or you can refer to the material at a later stage. The second thing, and more importantly, is that we have our technical consultants available on the live chat. So in case you want more details about a particular topic that is being discussed, do let us know on the live chat. Do ask your questions and interact with us, because we've got a team of about 5 or 6 technical consultants joining us today. So they will be taking your questions on anything that you would like to discuss further, right? So make use of the live chat, take advantage of that, because what we want to be covering in the webinar is more a general overview of several different concepts. So in case you want a more deep dive into something specific, do let us know in the live chat. And if time permits, I can even do a live Q&A session at the end so that I can take the questions and answer them for the benefit of the entire audience, right? So once again, thank you so much for joining us. And without further ado, let's get started with the session. Right, so this is what we have planned today. It's going to be a 35 to 40-minute session where we'll discuss some important ideas and concepts about log management and SIEM. Some of them might be basic and you might already know them, but we'll also be looking at certain ideas that you might have overlooked in your current environment. We'll also look at some best practices in deploying and monitoring your network using a SIEM solution, the kinds of different areas that you want to focus on. We'll have a look at that. And we'll also keep focusing on different tips for evaluating SIEM solutions, right? So these are questions that you should ask your vendor before you actually purchase a SIEM solution. So at different parts of the webinar, we'll be looking at certain best practices and also certain tips and questions that you must ask your vendor while evaluating their SIEM solution, right? And of course, the Q&A session, like I said, so please keep your questions coming on the live chat so that we can interact with all of you and take in your inputs and also help answer your concerns, right? So let's get started with the actual session, right? So SIEM is something that has been in the market for 10, 15 years with so many different names. Some vendors call it log management. Some people say auditing products. Some of us say SIEM. Some of us say unified threat management. There's just so much of language and so much of jargon that is being used that sometimes we might forget what exactly we're trying to achieve by deploying a SIEM solution, right? Because this happens because of different vendors marketing their products in different ways. And ManageEngine, here at ManageEngine, we also use different kinds of language and this lingo to talk about our products. So you guys as end users of these products, as administrators, it can get pretty tricky for you guys to understand exactly what the solution is going to do for you, right? So in this slide, I want to talk about a different approach to understanding what a SIEM solution can do, right? Because in theory, yes, we know what a SIEM solution is. It's going to collect logs, it's going to generate reports, it's going to throw up alerts, it's going to correlate different events and give you larger reports for compliance and alerts for more complex attack patterns. But in short, I'd like to think that SIEM solutions can help you answer important security questions, right? So if you want to, at a given point, know answers to the questions that you see on the screen. Who is accessing and modifying your critical files and folders? This event is going to be recorded in a log and is going to be tracked by a SIEM solution. Which user accounts have been locked out and why have they been locked out? Which is of course a huge problem for AD administrators and security administrators alike. Questions like these: is there any suspicious activity on your firewall? At a given point, right now it's 3:30 p.m. here in India. At this very moment, can you say for certain that there is no suspicious or malicious activity on your firewall? And if you want to know the answer to the question of whether there is any suspicious activity on your firewall, this is something that a SIEM solution can give you, right? And more, I mean, several questions like these. Were any critical changes made to your domain controller or network devices, right? So if someone is modifying security groups, if someone is changing firewall rules, these are things that you can monitor and get answers for using a SIEM solution, right? So think of this as the approach when you're evaluating a SIEM solution. What are the kinds of questions it can answer for you, and what are the kinds of security use cases it can help you solve, right? Because a lot of the time when you're evaluating a SIEM solution, you may be thinking about log processing speed or device support or things like that, which are all important, yes. But a lot of the time, you might end up buying the wrong solution for your requirements, right? So you might just need a product that can do basic heavy duty log management for you, but you might end up buying a huge SIEM solution, which really you don't need for your environment. Right, so think about this when you're evaluating and deploying SIEM solutions. Think about what value you can extract from it in terms of what security questions it can answer for you and what security use cases it can solve. Right, so this is what I wanted to get started with, right? Because we have certain jargon and misconceptions in our head about what we need to be doing with a SIEM solution. Right, so I just wanted to give a fresher perspective on how we can view SIEM solutions, because they've evolved so much over the last 10 years, and you have so many new kinds of technology being incorporated in SIEM, right? You have more capability to monitor your cloud infrastructure, that is, go beyond your office's network perimeter and monitor cloud infrastructure. You have the ability now to monitor each user's action and detect behavior anomalies. So you have a lot of technology which is being built into SIEM solutions, that it becomes very important to understand what problems you have in your network and what your SIEM solution that you're evaluating is going to help you achieve. This is what we wanted to get started with, right? Because in this 4-part webinar series, we have different sessions that focus on different things, right? So today we are looking more as a general overview of log management and SIEM and some basic concepts, some tips for evaluating solutions and things like that. In the next session, we'll be focusing more on active directory auditing for tracking internal threats. And in the third session, we'll be looking at setting up specific security alerts in your environment and exactly what events you need to track and how you can set up alerting for them. And in the final session, we're going to be looking at user behavior anomaly detection, right? UEBA, if some of you are familiar with that term. So today's session is going to be purely on an overview of log management and SIEM, and we're going to be looking at over the course of this session, we're going to be looking at ManageEngine SIEM solution Log360, which can do all the things that we will discuss over these 4 sessions. Right, so I just wanted to get started off on this note, which was to give a fresh idea about SIEM, and hopefully this will greatly benefit those of you who are looking to evaluate different SIEM solutions. Right, so let's get started with the actual material. Right, so we're going to be looking at 7 very, very important aspects that a SIEM solution must do for you, starting with log collection, analysis and auditing of the logs, archival of the logs, secure archival, event correlation, real-time alerts, streamlined incident response, and in-depth forensic analysis. Right, so these are the 7 areas that a SIEM solution, broadly speaking, covers. And each of these 7, the better you can do each of these 7 things, the more secure your environment is going to be, right? Because right from the process of collecting logs from different sources to carrying out forensic investigations, you want to make sure that at every stage you have the right measures implemented so that you can stay on top of your log management lifecycle, right? So right from log collection to forensics. So let's start off with log collection. right? And here a lot of the times we have our customers very curious as to what devices in their environment must they monitor, right? Because you have a whole bunch of things, and what I've listed out on the screens are typically what you might be dealing with, right? You'll have workstations that your end users use. You'll have some critical servers, domain controllers. You'll have firewalls, routers, and switches. IDS, IPS. These are all basic. All of us have these in our IT environments. You're going to have some endpoint security solutions deployed. Of course, you're going to have databases and web servers. And a lot of you now, especially in 2018, might also have public cloud infrastructure, Azure, AWS, and other cloud platforms. You might be running on Salesforce, Office 365, and all of these other platforms, and you might be wondering, what do I exactly monitor, right? And the answer to this question is pretty tricky because it depends on both your network's bandwidth, your compliance requirements, and your budget, right? Because ideally you want to monitor everything, right? You want to monitor every single resource in your network, right? Because that is the only way you can truly get complete network visibility. However, it might not be possible for you to do this because of different constraints. You might have some budget constraints, you might have a whole bunch of different reasons why you might not be able to get logs from every single machine. So what we recommend is being able to audit the things that you see on the screen, right? These are basic. Make sure you're at least able to enable security monitoring on these devices that you see. Workstations are very important. A lot of the time, people ignore this because they think that, okay, a workstation isn't that important for me because all my important things are stored on my servers and databases. But the truth is, a lot of attacks start on workstations, right? A lot of attacks, including basic logon attacks, start on a workstation level and then proliferate across your network. So even if you take something like ransomware, the attacker, it's going to be very difficult for them to directly go ahead and compromise your critical financial server. But it's much easier for them to attack one of your end users' workstations and then using different techniques to actually propagate across your network and affect other machines. So it's very important here to remember that try not to ignore auditing your workstations, right? This is an important aspect. Your servers and domain controllers, I'm sure all of you know you have to be auditing those. These other things as well, you've got your syslogs coming in from your firewalls and routers. You might have some special endpoint security solutions deployed. So you want to also monitor the logs coming in from generated by those solutions, databases, web servers, all of these things. So what you see on the screen, try to see if you can start monitoring logs in real time from these sources, right? So this is a good starting point. Eventually, try to expand your scope. Public cloud infrastructure and other cloud platforms can get a little tricky, and you need more cutting edge tools to be able to do that for you. So, but make sure that at the bare minimum, at least for your workstation servers, your network devices, and databases, web servers, you're able to monitor all of these. Right. So this is an important first step that you need to take, which is to actually list down all of your log sources. Right. Make a count. You have, say, 200 workstations, 10 domain controllers, X number of firewalls, X number of routers and switches. So make a list of all of these things because this is very important to really know what you have in your environment and exactly from what machines you want to be getting event data from. Right. So this is one aspect. So here's a summary of the points you want to consider while evaluating a solution for its log collection capabilities. Right. So think about what your log sources are. Make a list, like I said, about how many of each log source you have in your environment. Then consider and analyze what are the events for which you want to enable auditing for. Right. You don't want to audit every single event that is being generated by every single device. Understand your IT security and compliance objectives and go ahead and tweak your audit policies, set up an optimal policy so that you aren't tracking too little events for you to make any sense out of, nor are you tracking all events where important events get lost in the noise, right? So in case of Windows, and I could just jump into on even my laptop, I can just go to gpedit.msc to open my group policy editor, and I can just show you what I mean by tweaking your audit policy, right? So if some of you are familiar with working with Windows environment, you would know that you can go set up these security settings where you can actually define a local policy or a group policy to specify what events a system needs to track. So remember, first of all, that all of these events are turned off. The auditing for all of these events is turned off by default. So, so what this means is that you have to go and specify an audit policy to tell the system what are the events it needs to generate log entries for. So normally you might be tempted to go ahead and enable auditing for all log on events, right? So you can go ahead and do this for each of these different policies that you see. But what I meant by audit only the events that concern you is what you can do in the advanced audit policy configuration, right? So you can go here, go look at the system audit policies in a more granular level and track specific events under log ones, right? You have 4 subcategories right here. You go to something like object access, you have 13 subcategories right here. So if you want to just go to your local policy and enable object access auditing, you will be tracking all of these events, right? You'll be tracking all of these 13 subcategories. So what you should instead be doing is understanding what events are of concern for you. So you might be obligated to be HIPAA compliant. So you might need a certain bunch of file access and modification reports. So go ahead and tweak your audit policy so that you're only tracking the categories or subcategories of events that concern you. Right? So you might just want to track file shares and file systems and maybe say removable storage events. So you can go ahead and tweak this. This is a very important aspect. Not only is it important for you to identify what log sources you want to pull in event information from, but you also want to ensure that on each of those log sources, you are configuring an optimal audit policy, right? So that's important. Then you think about how you want to collect the logs, right? So depending on the environment, you might have to use an agent-based or an agent-less mechanism, right? So if you have typically agent-less mechanisms work really well, and you can use different techniques like say WMI API queries on LDAP queries on Windows environment. You can have other mechanisms to collect say syslogs and other application logs. This works well for most part, but sometimes you might have say DMZs or different environments where you can't access the log data through these kinds of querying techniques. And in which case, then you'd want to go for an agent-based mechanism, right? So after you identify your log sources and enable audit policies on them, figure out how you want to pull in the log data. Do you want to use an agent-less technique to get the log, the event information, or whether you want to use an agent to process the logs on the machine and then send it to your SIEM solution server, right? So you have to figure this out. Which are the log sources for which you need to deploy agents and for which you can go with agent-less mechanisms, right? So make sure when you evaluate a SIEM solution, ensure that, and this might seem obvious, but ensure that it's able to collect logs from all the sources of concern, and especially if you have requirements where you need to monitor, say, Office 365 or Salesforce or your Azure or AWS platforms, make sure your SIEM solution can collect logs from those sources as well. Make sure your SIEM solution supports both agent-based as well as agent-less log collection techniques. Both are equally important. Make sure that ask your vendor, is the log collection secure, right? So are they using TCP protocols? Are they using hashing and different techniques to ensure that the logs that are being collected are secure and not tampered with, right? So these are questions that you might want to evaluate. Is the SIEM solution able to process logs from all of my event sources? And also if it supports both agent-based and agent-less mechanisms, right? So this is point number 1 on log collection. Next comes log archival, right? And this is very important for compliance audits. And those of you who regularly deal with the compliance management in your organization, you would know that a lot of compliance regulations expect you to store or archive log data for a certain period of time, right? So you might have, say, 6 months or 270 days or 1 year. Some regulations even say you have to archive the logs indefinitely, right? Like forever. So this is a very important aspect that a SIM solution must satisfy for you. You need to ensure that you're able to archive logs for many reasons, including reducing the hard disk space for compliance and for forensic investigations. So check with your vendor if it's possible to securely archive logs that are being collected. If the logs that are being collected and archived are timestamped, so that they're tamper proof, or rather if someone tries to tamper with them, you would know. And also check whether the logs that are archived are encrypted, right? So you need secure log archival for flexible time periods, right? So you should be able to set up that you want a log archival for, say, 270 days or 360 days. You should be able to set that using your SIM solution. So make sure that this functionality is available in the tool that you're evaluating, that you should be able to securely archive the logs and also ensure that they are tamper proof, right? So this is number two. The third thing that we want to discuss is on the analysis and the auditing part of the logs, right? So at this stage, we have collected the logs from our different sources that concern us, and we've collected only events that concern us. So at this point, we've collected a whole bunch of data into the SIM solution from different sources, our databases, web servers, our public cloud infrastructure, everything. So we have gigabytes or terabytes of log data in our system, and we need to be able to visualize this data in the form of graphs and dashboards, right? So what I mean by that is, if I just jump to a setup of Event Log Analyzer, which is a module of Log360, you can see what I mean, right? So if I just have the dashboard, and this is a really neat way of getting an overview of different things that are happening. And so you can monitor different things, your SSH logons, which is important to track compromised hosts, your different things. You have security, all the different object access events, logon events, the policy changes based on the different categories. So this kind of dashboard and reporting functionality is very important to visualize the millions of logs that you're collecting, right? Because you can't go, obviously, you know that you can't go and read every single log message. So you need these kinds of dashboards and reports to really make sense of what's going on, right? So this is what I mean when I say that you want to have effective analysis, right? So make sure that you're able to get this out of your SIM solution. There is no point if your tool is just something that collects logs and allows you to search through them, right? Because you can't visualize. If you can't visualize the logs that you're collecting, then that defeats the whole purpose, right? So, and these reports, of course, become very important when it comes to your compliance audits. Again, for those of you who are dealing with PCI or HIPAA or Sarbanes-Oxley, you would know the importance of being able to transform the log data into actionable information in the form of reports, right? So this is an important aspect. So here are the things that you want to consider when it comes to log analysis and auditing and reporting, right? So first, of course, does your SIM solution support universal log parsing? And this is sort of related to log collection, which is basically to say that any source that generates logs, your SIM solution should be able to collect and parse through those logs, right? So you want to ensure that you have this kind of universal log parsing capability built into the product. And next, of course, like I said, you want to make sure that you're able to run graphical audit reports. These could be dashboards which give overviews or specific reports for specific events, right? So you might want to know who all accessed your financial file server in the last 30 days. So your SIM solution should be able to give you a method of being able to run these reports for either internal or external audits, right? So this is very important for anything that you need. You might want to know what are all the different errors being encountered on your IIS web server. you should be able to run a basic report for this using your SIEM solution. So ask your vendor when you're evaluating if you can get the reports that you're looking for. If you can generate these reports that you need, you might need reports for all the DML, DDL changes on your Oracle database. Ask your vendor if once you've collected your logs from the Oracle database server, if you can actually run the reports that you need for your security and compliance requirements, right? So out of the box reports. Now that's again very crucial and makes your lives a lot easier. If your vendor is able to support a large number of devices out of the box, what that means is that you don't have to struggle in generating reports. You could just easily click on the pre-built reports and get the data that you're looking for, right? So like I said, for example, you need to know all the tables that have been altered in the last 1 week in your database. If this report is available out of the box with your SIEM solution, it makes your life a whole lot easier as an administrator. About these out-of-the-box reports, check if you can get custom reports, right? Because out-of-the-box reports might cover, say, 80 to 90% of your requirements. And if you look at even our own product, Log360, you'll be surprised and happily surprised to know that we give close to 1,000 predefined reports, right? So what this means is that device vendor-specific reports are available. So it could be that you're using Fortinet firewalls or Barracuda or Cisco, Juniper, Palo Alto, SonicWall, any of these things, and you would have reports available that are built into the product so that you can leverage these reports in just a matter of clicks, right? So, but over and above these predefined reports, you want to also ensure that you can customize reports so that you can really satisfy your environment specific requirements. So that's important. Make sure that your SIEM solution can give you these kinds of pre-built reports even for compliance, right? So a lot of SIEM solutions, including ours, we give pre-packaged templates for PCI or HIPAA or SOX or GDPR and things like that. So what this means is that you can get all of the reports that you need for as part of your, not all, but rather a part of the reports that you need for your PCI audit available out of the box in a template using our solution. Right? So this is an important aspect. And also make sure you're able to schedule reports. So if you want to analyze something on a weekly or a daily basis, make sure your SIEM solution has the functionality to schedule reports to be emailed to you in a PDF or CSV file as per your requirements at the given intervals, right? So you could probably get a report emailed to you every Monday morning for all the files that have been deleted on your critical server, right? So this is important functionality. So make sure you're asking these questions to your SIEM vendor and also analyze this in part of your evaluation. And so check all of these things when you're deploying a SIEM solution. Right, so this brings me to the fourth aspect that we wanted to discuss, which is event correlation. Right, because we've collected now, like I said, we've collected millions and millions of events from different sources. So you can't get an alert for every single of those million events, right? Because then you would just pass out with the alert fatigue. You just get like a million alerts every day, and you don't want that. So here is where a SIEM solution can bring in the feature of event correlation to be able to automatically analyze and associate disjointed events from different sources and make sense out of these disjointed events and give you alerts only for an event of interest. Right, so I've given a very basic example on the screen that you see in the bottom of the screen, which says if there are repeated logon failures followed by a logon success followed by a privileged user account creation. Right, so if a pattern like this happens in your environment, this could mean that someone is carrying out an advanced brute force password attack. Right, so you need to be the event correlation module of a SIEM solution can track this for you, right? Because if you were just relying on the raw logs, you would have, say, 10 logs for the logon failures, you would have a log for the logon success, and you would have a log for the privileged user account creation. So you have about 12 logs there. So you can't get 12 alerts. You need just one alert when this entire sequence of events happens. right? So this is a very basic example, but I like to show this one because it very clearly defines what a correlation engine can do for you, right? Because when as the logs are coming in and getting massive in some of your environments, you might have like um, terabytes of logs. You need this kind of automated processing of the information and give you alerts only for a pattern or a chain of events, right? So this is very important. And if you're wondering, so and here's what you need to consider, right, when it comes to correlation, because this is not a basic feature. This is pretty advanced because this capability involves analyzing several um, thousands and millions of events and being able to process this and make sense out of this, right? So the first thing you want to check here is if your SIM solution comes with pre-built correlation rules, right? So this means that your vendor has identified different security use cases and has enabled that automatically into the product so that anytime those known patterns get triggered in your environment, you're able to get alert notifications, right? So this is very important. And the more such correlation rules and use cases your vendor can satisfy, the more secure your environment, right? So you might get say 50 to 100 correlation rules. That's a really good start because you're able to solve 50 to 100 security attack use cases. So check this with your vendor. Check how many events do they for how many different security use cases do they have correlation rules for. Also ensure that the correlation is cross-platform, which means that you're able to correlate logs from, say, a Windows server and your Fortinet VPN or something like that, right? So you don't want correlation to be restricted to just from the same device because then you're going to lose out on a lot of uh, more complicated attack patterns. So make sure you're able to correlate logs from different sources. That's important. Custom rules, just like with custom reports, ensure that you're able to tweak what is given to you to create rules specific to your environment, right? So this is an important functionality. So if I just jump to if I may just jump to the event log analyzer module, I can just show you what I mean by correlation and really give you more insights on what kinds of things to look out for, right? So our product has a whole bunch of correlation rules. I'm not going to get into the details of individual rules, but I'll just give you an example, right? So if I just look at suspicious services being installed, you can see that the product has thrown alerts at different times for this event. If you look at the event timeline, you'll understand what I mean, right? So you can see that a whole bunch of events have happened between 1748 and 1751. Now, the product is intelligent enough to keep listening to the next event until a potential compromise might be underway and alert you when that happens, right? So it's not going to give you an alert for each of these events. It's not going to give you an alert at 1748 and then for this event and then for this event and then for this event. Instead, it's going to give you an alert when all of these events have happened together, one after the other. And at 1751:29, it's going to say that, we might have a problem here because suspicious service might have been installed and started on one of your Windows servers, right? So the product is this kind of intelligence is built into the product, right? These are predefined correlation rules. So what this means is that you don't have to configure anything to track this event. As soon as you set up Log360 in your environment, if this kind of a pattern happens in your environment, you will get a real-time notification, right? So this is very important. And this is also important because this makes it a whole lot easier for you to start seeing results from deployment, right? If you have uh, much bigger requirements, you can of course go ahead and create your own correlation rules, right? So if you're a large enterprise and you need to start setting up more advanced correlation rules and running these rules in your environment, you can very well go ahead and create new rules by choosing different events that are given in the product and create a pattern that you want to be tracking, right? So this is important to have this flexibility. Make sure your vendor is able to provide you with a lot of predefined correlation rules that satisfy basic security use cases and also give you the functionality to create and run your own rules so that you can get the details and satisfy the requirements that is specific to your environment, right? So these are important things to consider. How easy it is to investigate the incident. You saw the event timeline that clearly tells you what happened one after in a sequence of as a sequence, so you can really know what different events happen one after the other to lead up to the alert getting triggered. So make sure it's easy to investigate, right? You want to have a low time to detect, low time to investigate, so that you have a low time to low response time, right? So this is jargon that a lot of people use. They say MTTD, mean time to detect and respond to attacks. So if you're able to trigger these alerts efficiently using your SIEM solutions correlation engine, and then easily able to drill down and investigate the incident, that's going to make it so much easier for you to quickly respond to the threat at hand. Right? So this is a very important aspect. Real-time alerts, very similar to correlation. Ultimately, the alert is going to be triggered once the correlation pattern has been triggered in your environment. So you want to ensure that your SIEM solution gives you notifications for both external threats, such as say firewall and web server, that sort of threats, as well as internal security threats. Right? So I'm sure a lot of you have read how uh, insider attacks are on the rise, and how a lot of the time you have malicious actors inside your enterprise. So you need to ensure that your SIEM solution is able to give you these alerts even for internal users who are up to no good, right? So if one of your users is trying to copy files from a sensitive server to their workstation, this is something that you should be able to track using a SIEM solution. And when the alert gets triggered, you should have the functionality to automatically run a script when the alert gets triggered, so that the threat response can be automated, right? So rather than you getting the alert and then investigating, you can try to set up a custom script so that when the alert gets triggered, the product can take action to curb the threat automatically, right? So this is important functionality for threat response. Again, something that you want to check with your vendor. Right. And while setting up an alert, you again want to make sure that you can tweak the alerting criteria. I can again jump back to the product to show you what I mean. Because here with our product, we give close to 1,000 pre-built alerts that you can just pick and choose from. So it's very easy if you want to set up an alert. Right. So let me give you an example. Let's say we want to set up an alert for a server being shut down. Right. So if we want an alert for when one of our important Windows server gets shut down, here is how you can easily set up the alert using our product. Right. So first you just give a name for the alert. I'm going to just call it Windows server shutdown. You set up a severity for the alert, which could be say this is of course a high severity alert. You choose the device for which you want the alert for. So I'm just going to choose the Windows group of machines that I have automatically discovered and configured. And then you choose the event for which you want the alert for, right? So here is where pre-built functionality comes into the picture. Because if you just look here you have different categories of alerts, and just under Windows, you have over 183 pre-built alerts. So you can choose the alerts that are important in your environment and set these up very easily. So we said we wanted an alert for a Windows server being shut down. Let me just get there. I can maybe show 100 alerts per page and just scroll down a bit. Windows shutdown. Let's see. We've got right here, Windows shutdown. Right. So you can see that the alerting criteria gets automatically populated. It says here event ID equals 513 or 4609 and source equals something, and so you have a whole condition right here which has been pre-engineered by our developers, right? Because we've done a lot of research on different alerting criteria and are providing these simple alerts out of the box so that you just have to click Windows shutdown and click save. And once you do that, you just have to choose how you want the alert notification. You can either choose an SMS or email, or you can run a program. Like I said, you can run an automatic script that will be triggered when the alert gets triggered, right? So, and when I talked about reducing the alert noise, we saw in the slide, it said working hours configuration and threshold configuration. Again, that is something that you can do here. Thresholds mean that you can choose how many times the event has to occur within how many minutes, and a time range. So you can choose, say, working hours, non-working hours, or customize the time range for when the alert has to get triggered, right? So if some activity is normal during working hours, but is abnormal during the non-working hours, you can go very deep into the alert configuration and granularly set up these alerts in your environment. So make sure whether you're using Log360 or whether you're evaluating any other SIEM solution, make sure this functionality is available. You want pre-built reports, pre-built alerts. You want to be able to tweak the alerts as per your requirements, set up these thresholds and working hours and things like that. Have the ability to customize and run a script when the alert gets triggered, and make sure the alerts are available for both internal as well as external threats. Right? So make sure you're asking these questions. This brings me to the penultimate. Sorry about that. I just skipped a few slides. This brings me to the penultimate topic that we want to discuss, which is on streamlining the incident response. Right. So far we've looked at different mechanisms to quickly detect events by means of event correlation and alerting. But once we actually get the alert, we need to ensure that we have a small time to actually respond to the incident, right? So once you get the alert, you want the alert to be investigated as soon as possible. So here what you can do is you can actually set up ticketing for your alerts so that as the alert gets triggered, a ticket is raised to the designated administrator who can then quickly analyze and respond to the incident. So what this does is it brings in accountability to your security operations. Right? So if an alert X got triggered today at 5 p.m. and it automatically at 5 p.m. has been raised to an administrator, John, as a manager, you would know that John is currently looking up this particular alert at 5 p.m. and you can track the entire resolution process of the alert. Right? So this is very important when it comes to streamlining your incident response and also reducing the time, right? Because if you get the alert and then 10 minutes later you assign the alert as a ticket to an administrator, you're losing precious time in the attack kill chain. So whereas here, as the event gets triggered in your environment, your SIM solution can actually raise the alert and also raise the ticket for the alert in real time, so that immediately after the event happens, an administrator is looking into the incident, right? So here I can just show you what I mean by configuring this kind of ticketing. So you can actually assign rules in our product. You can basically choose that you might either have, say, an administrator who's in charge of a particular device or device group. So you can say that any alert that gets triggered on a particular device group must be assigned to some administrator, or you can also go ahead and say that specific alert profiles, right? So for example, maybe you have specialists in databases and web servers and things like that. So you can go ahead and say that any web server alert or any database alert has to go to this particular administrator. So you can make sure that in your SIM solution you're able to configure this thing so that as the alert gets triggered, a ticket is raised to the designated administrator in real time, right? So that then you can follow the block diagram that you see on the screen. The incident gets triggered, your SIM solution raises an alert. It also simultaneously raises a ticket to an administrator, which gives the accountability. The administrator can then go to the SIM solution and analyze the incident, take action if necessary, that is, respond to the incident, and then report the incident for your internal or external audits, right? So this is a very, very, very important aspect for what people call security orchestration, right? So you want to have a very streamlined process to ensure that not only are you getting alerts quickly for threats, but you're also able to respond to the threats quickly and efficiently, right? So this is very important. So this summarizes what you need to look out for when it comes to alerting and incident response. Check if your SIM solution comes with pre-built criteria, pre-built alerting criteria. So how many pre-built alerts does your vendor provide? Check that with them. Can a script be executed when the alert is triggered? this is very important because for some of the attacks, you might want to automate the threat response. So check again with your vendor if this can be this is possible. Of course, also check whether your alerting criteria can be configured and customized for your requirements. So over and above having all of these pre-built alerts, make sure you can tweak the alerting criteria. And finally, check if the alerts can be raised as tickets in different ticketing tools, right? So you might be using ManageEngine Service Desk Plus or ServiceNow or something else. So you should check if your SIM solution can be integrated with these different service desks so that you can raise the alerts as a ticket in real time to really reduce the response time, right? So the alerts are going to help you reduce the detection time. But if you have these kinds of integrations enabled, you'll have an accountable, streamlined process, a central process where you can go and monitor which admins are currently working on which different incidents. This brings me to my final slide of the presentation on forensic analysis, right? So if something does go wrong, if you find out that last week you had a breach in your enterprise, only if you have a SIM solution in place will you be able to go and investigate into the incident, right? So you'll just have to simply go back to the time of the compromise and search through your different logs that you have and find out exactly what happened in the incident and and figure out what steps need to be taken to curb the attack. Now, this is very important for reporting breaches, right? So if some of you are familiar with the GDPR, it actually has a specific uh, article that talks about mandatory breach reporting, right? So auditors want to know if you have had a data breach and they want you to provide clear details about the data breach, right? So if you just tell an auditor that you had a data breach and didn't know what happened, you're going to be sued for negligence. However, if you do have a data breach and you're able to show clear-cut security measures and policies that you had at different stages, despite which the attack happened, and you're able to clearly tell them the sequence of events that happened during the data breach and also which were the individuals affected, then you are not going to be penalized for in terms of fines for the data breach, right? So forensic analysis also sort of ties back to what we saw in incident response, right? So if you're able to show your auditors a clear flow of the alert being triggered, being attended to by a particular administrator, and being resolved within a certain amount of time, you will not be fined for non-compliance, right? So this is very important, having this forensic analysis capability, and this usually translates to log search in SIM solutions, right? Because you have a whole bunch of logs, you should be able to quickly peruse through these millions of logs and find out details that you're looking for, right? So if you find out that, say, last Friday at 5:10 p.m. you had a compromise on your web server, you should quickly be able to load that data from Friday to your SIM solution, specifically go and look at all the logs that were generated at 5:10, find out which was the IP address, say that uh, caused the compromise, then find out where else that IP address hit your network and things like that, and really backtrack the entire pattern of events that led to the security attack, and then generate a report based on that, right? So this is very important to have this kind of functionality, right? Something goes wrong, you're able to identify which was um, the malicious IP address, check whether that malicious IP address touched your network anywhere else, what other activity did it try to do in your network. All of this can be done only if you have a neat, intuitive search mechanism, right? Because you can't keep writing scripts to pull out data from terabytes of information. You should be in a position where you can clearly say, go to 5:10 p.m. on a particular day, look at the web server logs on that day, find out the malicious IP address, find out what else the malicious IP address did. So this is a very important functionality, right? And the search has to be quick. So when you're evaluating tools, check on the search speed, check on how you can investigate incidents. Will you be able to go and properly check activity of one malicious user in the rest of your network? Will you be able to search through all of this data efficiently? This is something that you want to check with your vendors, right? Because this It's something that you won't realize until something goes wrong in your environment. Right? Because on a given day, you wouldn't want to be carrying out a forensic investigation. But suddenly, 6 months down the line, something goes wrong, and you realize your SIM solution doesn't have this kind of capability to uh, track and report uh, old incidents, then you're in a bit of a problem. So it makes sense to focus on this well in advance and check whether you're able to do this kind of investigation using your SIM solution, right? So this brings me to the end of the presentation part of the session. Some of you have been asking questions on the live chat. And that we've been trying to answer. If your questions haven't yet been answered, just bear with us for a minute or two, and we should uh, complete answering all the unanswered questions. In case you have any more product questions, do reach out to us on our support email, which is log360-support at manageengine.com. If you're wondering about our own SIM solutions capabilities, all the things that we discussed today, we do those things, right? So the questions that I recommended or suggested that you ask your vendor, I want you to ask that even for Log360 if you're evaluating it, and see exactly how Log360 can do these, the different functionality that you're looking for in a real environment. Right? So I'm just going to leave you with one more free resource. Just going to go to Log360's website, so you can also access this to get more details about the product. And I just want to give you some details on what the product can actually do for you, right? In terms of what are the different things it can track. So this is a pretty neat mini site that you can access, which talks about the different industries that we can cater to, specific compliance objectives, and also the different kinds of sources that we can monitor. Right. So I'm just going to share this on the live chat, so you can go ahead and look through the website and this small mini site, and you can also schedule a demo for the features that you're interested in. So if you're looking at monitoring Active Directory changes and your logon activity and privileged users, you can just choose your different your specific requirements in finance and PCI DSS, and then schedule a demo, a web demo with one of our partners or with one of our pre-sales consultants, so that you can see the product in action, right? Because the product can do all the different things that we discussed generally in today's webinar. So if you'd like to see the product in action, either drop in an email to the support ID that you see on the screen, or do reach out to us via the demo request form that I have shared on the live chat, right? So apart from that, I think we've finished answering all the questions by now. In case you have any more questions, do reach out to us. We are going to be available for another 10 minutes, so reach out to us on the live chat. Apart from that, do take a moment to fill up the feedback form at the end of the session to tell us what you liked or what you didn't like, or what you'd like to see in the next session of this 4-part series. Do tune in to our next session, which is tomorrow, where we focus on Active Directory auditing and alerting. Right? So make sure you're attending all the 4 sessions to get a full overview of different SIM concepts and ideas. Right? So thank you so much once again for joining us. It's been an amazing audience. We've got really good interaction on the live chat, which is great to see. So I hope that tomorrow as well, you guys will tune in. We'll have Mark from our Active Directory auditing team to walk you through some really cool concepts and use cases on AD change auditing. So I hope we continue to see you in those remaining 3 parts of our webinar series as well. So apart from that, thank you so much once again for joining us, and I hope you have a great day ahead.